Stadium security drags out a 78-year-old black Army hero, mocking his claim to see his grandson play. Minutes later, a 4-star general halts the championship game, demanding respect for his former sergeant major. The crisp autumn air buzzed with the electric energy of championship college football. 78-year-old Command Sergeant Major Elias Vance, U.S. Army, retired, felt a familiar warmth spread through his chest, a counterpoint to the day's chill. His grandson, David Vance, the university's star quarterback, was playing for the title. Elias wouldn't miss it for the world. Dressed in his best, though well-worn, navy blazer over a neatly pressed shirt and a modest tie, he clutched the printed e-ticket David had mailed him. A small, understated Distinguished Service Cross lapel pin, a replica of the one he'd earned for extraordinary heroism decades ago in a forgotten conflict, was affixed to his lapel. His VFW cap, bearing the insignia of a famed Army division he'd once served with, sat squarely on his head. His steps, aided by a slight limp, a memento from a parachute jump gone wrong, were slow but determined as he navigated the throngs toward Section 102, prime seating near the 50-yard line, reserved for players' families. The stadium was a roaring cauldron of team colors and anticipation. Elias finally reached the entrance to his section, his heart light with pride. He presented his printed ticket to the young usher, Kevin, who seemed overwhelmed by the crowd. Kevin scanned the ticket. Frowned. Scanned it again. Sir, he said, flustered, this ticket isn't validating. Says, seat occupied or invalid code. A knot of anxiety tightened in Elias's chest. That can't be right, son. My grandson, David Vance, the quarterback. He arranged this ticket for me personally. Kevin, trying to keep the impatient line moving, gestured towards a burly supervisor in a security polo shirt. You'll have to talk to Mr. Henderson, sir. I can't let you in if it doesn't scan. Henderson, a man whose impatience was etched on his face, listened to Elias's explanation with a dismissive air. He barely glanced at the printed ticket. Look, old-timer, Henderson said, his voice gruff and condescending, his eyes flicking over Elias's modest attire and dark skin with a clear lack of respect. These e-tickets? Duplicates all the time. Scammers trying to get in cheap. Section 102 is VIP, verified family. If it ain't scanning, you ain't getting in. You don't exactly fit the profile. He handed the paper back. But my grandson is the quarterback, David Vance. Elias insisted, his voice rising slightly in desperation, the injustice stinging. He wouldn't give me a bad ticket. Other fans in line were now staring, some annoyed, some with pity. Henderson scoffed. Yeah, everyone's related to the star player today. Sir, this ticket is useless. Try general admissions, maybe they got some nosebleeds left. Now, step aside. The public dismissal, the casual cruelty, hit Elias harder than he expected. He, who had faced down enemy fire and commanded men in battle, was being treated like a vagrant. There must be a system error, Elias said quietly, his voice tight with controlled emotion, a last attempt at reason. Could you please just check David Vance's family guest list? My name, Elias Vance, Command Sergeant Major, retired, should be on it. Henderson rolled his eyes with exaggerated theatricality. Command Sergeant Major, huh? Look, I don't have time for your war stories or to play detective with lists. You got a working ticket, or you move. End of story. He then gestured to two younger, more muscular security guards nearby, their expressions blank. Guys, this gentleman needs some assistance, finding his way to the main concourse. The euphemism was clear. This was an ejection. The two security guards, their faces impassive, moved in. One placed a firm, unyielding hand on Elias's arm. Come on, Pop. Let's go. No trouble now, he said, his voice devoid of any respect, already beginning to guide Elias away from the gate. I am Command Sergeant Major Elias Vance, Elias stated, his voice low but firm, a lifetime of authority in its timbre, though his body was frail. "I am the guest of my grandson, David Vance. I demand you check the manifest." The lead guard, the one Henderson had primarily addressed, just grunted. "Sure you are, buddy. And I'm Santa Claus. Just keep walking." They began to forcibly march him up the crowded aisle of Section 102, away from the field, away from the chance to see David play. Confused stares and hushed whispers followed their progress. Some onlookers shook their heads in disapproval, others quickly looked away, embarrassed or indifferent. The humiliation was a burning coal in Elias's chest. He, who had worn his uniform with immense pride, who had sacrificed for the very freedoms these people enjoyed, was being manhandled out of a public stadium like a common trespasser, simply because his ticket wouldn't scan and a security supervisor had judged him unworthy by appearance. The guards were rough, their grips like iron, their pace too fast for Elias and his slight limp. He stumbled once, his VFW cap nearly falling, the small flag on his walker trembling. The bright colors of the stadium, the roar of the crowd, the pre-game pageantry on the field below, it all seemed to mock him, a painful reminder of the joy he was being denied. His promise to David, to be there, to witness his big game, felt like it was shattering with every step they forced him to take. As they neared the top of the aisle, the exit to the cacophonous main concourse looming, a desperate idea sparked in Elias's mind. A long shot, an almost impossibly audacious one, but it was all he had left. Years ago, during a USO tour to a forward operating base in a particularly grim theater of war, he'd spent several days with the then Major General commanding the sector, Alastair "Rock" Hammond. They had bonded over shared experiences and a mutual respect. Hammond was now chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a 4-star general, and Elias knew from David that General Hammond was a distinguished alumnus of this very university and a passionate supporter of its football program. There was a high chance he was at this championship game, likely in a VIP suite. "Excuse me, son," Elias said, his voice surprisingly steady despite the turmoil inside him, addressing the guard gripping his arm. "There's someone important here today. Could you possibly get an urgent message to General Alastair Hammond? Tell him his old friend, Command Sergeant Major Elias Vance, is being escorted from his grandson David's championship game due to a ticketing issue in Section 102. The guard actually snorted, a short, derisive sound. "General Hammond?" "Yeah, right. And I'm best friends with the president." "Keep moving, Grandpa. Almost there." But a woman in an aisle seat a few rows down, dressed in a smart university alumni blazer, overheard. She was an aide to the university chancellor. She recognized General Hammond's prominent name, and something in the old black man's dignified bearing, the mention of his rank, and the sheer desperation in his voice struck a chord. As the guards pushed Elias through the exit tunnel, their backs to her, she discreetly pulled out her phone. Her fingers flew across the screen, sending a quick, urgent text message directly to the chancellor, who she knew was hosting General Hammond in his private suite. The message was brief, urgent: CSM Elias Vance, guest of General Hammond N.D., Vance's grandfather, being ejected Sector 102 by security. Possible error. 5 minutes. That's all it took from that text message being sent. Elias was now sitting dejectedly on a cold concrete bench in the noisy, impersonal outer concourse of the stadium. The roar of the crowd from within, announcing the kickoff, was a physical ache in his heart. He was trying to compose himself, to figure out how he would even contact David after the game to explain his absence, when the stadium's roar didn't just continue, it abruptly died. An unnatural, echoing silence fell, so profound that even Elias, outside the main bowl, could feel the change. It was followed by a wave of confused, spreading murmurs. The Jumbotron, partially visible through a wide entranceway, which had been showing game highlights, flickered. Then, stark white letters on a black background, game temporarily delayed. Official announcement pending. Elias frowned. What on earth? Then, a new voice, crisp, clear, and imbued with an unshakable authority that brooked no argument, crackled and boomed from the stadium's massive PA system, a voice accustomed to addressing armies, not sports fans. It was a voice that froze every player on the field mid-stride, silenced tens of thousands of fans in an instant, and made Command Sergeant Major Elias Vance's own heart give a startled, hopeful leap. "Attention, please. This is General Alastair Hammond, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, speaking." Inside the stadium, a stunned silence had fallen, so absolute you could hear the distant hum of the stadium lights. All eyes, tens of thousands of them, turned upwards towards the opulent VIP suites where General Alastair "Rock" Hammond now stood, a microphone in his hand, his four-star insignia glinting under the stadium lights. His face, projected onto the massive jumbotrons, was like a thundercloud. He was a man known for his calm demeanor, but his expression was one of cold, controlled fury. "It has come to my attention," General Hammond's voice boomed, each word precise and carrying immense weight, "that a distinguished guest of this university, a decorated combat veteran of the United States Army, the grandfather of our Titan's own quarterback, David Vance, and I will add, a personal guest and a former esteemed colleague of mine, Command Sergeant Major Elias Vance, has been improperly, disrespectfully, and I dare say, shamefully removed from his designated family seating in Section 102 by stadium security personnel." A collective gasp rippled through the stadium. On the sidelines, David Vance, being briefed by an equally stunned coach, looked up towards the VIP box, his face a mask of disbelief, then dawning anger, quickly followed by a surge of fierce pride for his grandfather and gratitude towards the general. Security Supervisor Henderson, who had been preening near the team's entrance, felt a chilling dread snake down his spine. The two guards who had physically removed Elias exchanged panicked glances. This was escalating far beyond their pay grade. "Command Sergeant Major Thorne," General Hammond continued, his voice resonating with a powerful indignation that was palpable even through the PA system, "is a man who has served this nation with extraordinary distinction and valor for over 30 years. He is the recipient of the Distinguished Service Cross for gallantry under fire. He is a hero in the truest, most profound sense of the word. The very suggestion that he would attempt to scam his way into a football game, or that his appearance does not fit the profile for family seating, is an egregious insult. It is an insult not only to him, a black man who has given more to this country than most can comprehend, but to every man and woman who has ever worn the uniform of this nation, and it is an affront to the very spirit of this university, which purports to honor its veterans." He paused, his gaze sweeping the silent stadium as if daring anyone to disagree. "Therefore," he declared, his voice ringing with an authority that left no room for negotiation, "this championship game will not resume. Not one more play will occur, until Command Sergeant Major Elias Vance is located, until he receives a formal, public apology from the head of stadium security and from the university chancellor himself, and until he is personally escorted back to his rightful seat in Section 102 with the honor, dignity, and utmost respect that he is due." The silence that followed was broken only by scattered, then growing, applause. Furthermore, General Hammond added, his voice a steely command, "The security personnel directly involved in this disgraceful incident will be immediately removed from their posts for the remainder of this game, and their conduct, along with that of their supervisor, will be subject to a full and immediate review by university authorities, with my office taking a keen personal interest in its findings." He then looked directly at where he knew the main television cameras were focused, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. "And to Command Sergeant Major Elias Vance, if you can hear me, sir, your grandson David, this entire university, and indeed, your nation, are immensely proud of you and your service. We await your return to your seat so that we may all witness the victory you came here today to see him achieve. We will hold the game for you, Sergeant Major. We will wait." The PA system clicked off, leaving an echoing silence that was quickly filled by a building roar, not of anger at the delay, but of stunned, then supportive, then outraged applause, a tidal wave of sound acknowledging the injustice and honoring the unseen hero. The game had stopped, but something far more significant had just begun. The scene outside the stadium, where Elias Thorne sat on the cold concrete bench, transformed from dejection to bewildering action. Within moments of General Hammond's electrifying announcement booming from the stadium speakers, a frantic procession converged on him. The university chancellor, Dr. Albright, looking pale and mortified, the athletic director, red-faced and apologetic, and a new, very senior-looking head of stadium security, who was barking into a radio, his expression grim. Henderson was conspicuously absent. The chancellor's aide, the woman from the stands, was pointing Elias out. "Command Sergeant Major Thorne." Dr. Albright exclaimed, rushing forward, his hand extended. "Sir, on behalf of the entire university, I offer our most profound and sincere apologies for the utterly unacceptable and disgraceful treatment you have endured today. There are no excuses. It was an outrage." Elias, stunned by the sudden turn of events, the general's powerful intervention still echoing in his ears, slowly rose, accepting the chancellor's hand. The two guards who had roughly escorted him out were now standing a few feet away, looking terrified, as the new head of security publicly and loudly relieved them of their duties on the spot. Supervisor Henderson, he was informed, was already being debriefed and faced severe disciplinary action, likely dismissal. "Sergeant Major," the Chancellor continued, his voice filled with genuine remorse, "General Hammond is awaiting you. The game is on hold. Please, allow me to personally escort you back to your seat. You are, and always will be, our most honored guest." Overwhelmed but with his innate dignity reasserting itself, Elias nodded. Tears welled in his eyes, not of humiliation this time, but of profound gratitude and a deep, stirring pride. As he was led by the Chancellor, with the athletic director and the new head of security flanking them respectfully, back towards Section 102, an extraordinary thing happened. General Hammond, a four-star combat general, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, was descending from the VIP suite, making his way down the stadium steps to meet him at the aisle. When Elias entered the section, the entire block of seats, then the neighboring sections, and then what felt like the entire stadium, rose to their feet. A deafening, sustained standing ovation, a roar of respect and acclamation, washed over him. David Vance, his helmet off, ran to the edge of the field, his face alight with tears and fierce pride, waving frantically to his grandfather. Elias, his own eyes now streaming, raised a trembling hand in acknowledgement, his old VFW cap clutched over his heart. He was guided to the very best seat in Section 102, right on the 50-yard line. General Hammond reached him, clasped his shoulder firmly, then embraced him briefly, a soldier's acknowledgement of a respected senior, a friend. "Welcome back, Sergeant Major," Hammond said, his voice gruff with emotion. "It's an honor to have you here." The game resumed. Fueled by a righteous fire and the overwhelming support for his grandfather, David Thorne played the game of his life, leading the Titans to a spectacular, decisive victory. Every touchdown, every brilliant pass, he'd glance up to Section 102, sharing a look, a nod, a moment of triumph with the quiet, unassuming hero who was his grandfather. The Elias Thorne incident, as it became known, was a legend at the university. Stadium security protocols were completely overhauled, with mandatory training in respect for veterans and elderly patrons. Henderson was fired. The message was indelible: honor, respect, and decency were not optional extras, especially when dealing with those who had sacrificed for the nation. CSM Elias Vance, who had only wanted to watch his grandson play football, had, without seeking it, brought an entire championship game to a halt and reminded a stadium of tens of thousands, and soon a nation, what truly mattered beyond the scoreboard. Command Sergeant Major Elias Vance's ordeal became a testament: true honor isn't always loud, and true respect must be earned by institutions, not just demanded from individuals. His quiet dignity, when assaulted, awakened a powerful echo of camaraderie and justice that resonated from the highest echelons. How can we better ensure that the sacrifices of our veterans, particularly elderly black heroes like CSM Vance, are always met with the respect they are profoundly due? Comment below with your insights. If you believe that honor and loyalty transcend any rulebook, like this story, share its powerful message, and subscribe to your channel name for more narratives where true heroes are finally seen.